The restaurant buzzed with the usual Friday evening energy. Waiters glided between tables carrying trays of steaming dishes while well-dressed diners laughed over wine glasses. In the corner booth, a group of men in expensive suits celebrated a business deal. Their voices grew louder with each round of drinks. Claire balanced 3 plates on her arms as she approached their table. Her uniform was crisp and clean, her smile professional despite the ache in her feet. She had been working double shifts for months now, and every muscle in her body reminded her of it. Finally, one of the men said, barely glancing at her, "We've been waiting forever." "Hello family, welcome back. Please take a moment to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, it truly means a lot to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. So sit back and relax as we dive into the story." Claire set down the plates carefully. "I apologize for the wait, gentlemen. Your steaks are prepared exactly as you requested." The man who had spoken looked up. His name was Richard, and his eyes were cold as they swept over her. "Do you even know what medium rare means?" he asked. "Or is that too complicated for someone like you?" His friends chuckled. Claire's smile didn't waver, though something tightened in her chest. "If there's anything wrong with your order, sir, I'll be happy to have the kitchen remake it." Richard cut into his steak and examined it. "It's fine," he said dismissively. "Barely acceptable, but fine." Throughout the meal, Richard continued making comments. When Claire refilled his water glass, he wondered aloud if she could count to 10. When she recommended the dessert menu, he asked if she could even read it. His friends laughed nervously, but none of them told him to stop. Claire had served difficult customers before. She had learned to let the insults roll off her back, to smile and nod and collect her tips. But there was something particularly cruel about Richard's tone, something that suggested he genuinely believed she was less than him. As she cleared their appetizer plates, Richard leaned back in his chair. "You know what?" he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "I bet you don't even know where Europe is. Someone like you probably thinks it's a type of cheese." His friend Daniel laughed the loudest, slapping the table. Another man, Thomas, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Claire stood very still. The plates in her hands felt suddenly heavy. Around them, other diners had stopped talking, sensing the tension. Richard grinned, emboldened by the attention. "Actually, I'll make you a deal," he said, pulling out his wallet. He threw $1,000 on the table. "Serve us the rest of this meal speaking only French. If you can do it, this money is yours. But when you fail, because we both know you will, you have to admit in front of everyone here that you're just a nobody who'll never amount to anything." The restaurant had gone completely silent. What would Claire do next? Claire looked at the money on the table, then at Richard's smug face. Something inside her shifted. For years she had swallowed her pride, bitten her tongue and smiled through humiliation. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the weight of every insult, every dismissive glance, every cruel joke pressed down on her until she couldn't breathe. She set down the plates carefully. When she looked up, her eyes were no longer those of a tired waitress. They blazed with something fierce and unbreakable. "You want to know where Europe is?" Claire's voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a knife. "I lived in Paris for 3 years. I worked in London for 2. I spent 18 months in Berlin managing international accounts." Richard's smile faltered. His friends stopped laughing. Claire continued, her words measured and deliberate. "I earned $37,000 a month before I came back to Boston. I had an apartment overlooking the Seine. I spoke at conferences in 5 different countries. I had everything." The restaurant remained frozen. Every eye was on her now. "Then my mother got sick," Claire said, her voice cracking slightly. "Cancer. She needed round-the-clock care and my father couldn't afford it. So I came home. I gave up everything to take care of the woman who raised me." Richard had gone pale. He opened his mouth but no words came out. "After she died, I had nothing left," Claire continued. "No savings, no job, no connections. So I started here doing honest work, trying to rebuild. And every single day I've served people like you. People who look at my uniform and decide they know everything about me." She picked up the $1,000 and held it in front of Richard's face. "You want me to prove I can speak French? Fine. But not for your money. Not for your entertainment. I'll do it because I can. Because I've always been able to. Because your ignorance about who I am doesn't change who I actually am." Daniel, Richard's friend, had tears in his eyes. "Claire, we didn't know." "You didn't care to know," Claire interrupted, turning to him. "How many times have I served you, Daniel? 6, 7? You've sat at my tables for months. Did you ever once ask me how I was? Did you ever see me as a person? Daniel looked down at his plate, ashamed. Claire turned back to Richard. His face had crumbled. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw and broken. I'm sorry, Richard whispered. I'm so sorry. But Claire wasn't finished yet. Claire took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. The entire restaurant watched as she transformed before their eyes. Her posture changed, her expression shifted, and suddenly she no longer looked like a tired waitress. She looked like the international consultant she had once been. Your bet still stands, she said to Richard. I'll serve you in perfect French. Not because I need to prove anything to you, but because I need to prove something to myself. That even after everything, even after being treated like furniture instead of a person, I can still maintain my dignity. Richard wiped his eyes with shaking hands. No, please. I was wrong. I was so wrong. You don't have to. I want to, Claire said firmly. She looked around the restaurant. Everyone here needs to see this. They need to understand that the person serving your food, cleaning your table, or parking your car might have lived a life you can't even imagine. They deserve respect not because of what they've done, but because they're human. Thomas, the third man at the table, suddenly stood up. He was older than the others, with gray at his temples and kind eyes that had been troubled all evening. Claire, he said gently. My name is Thomas. I'm an executive at Harrison Consulting. I've been listening to everything you've said, and I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. Claire looked at him, waiting. I'd like to offer you a position, Thomas continued. Senior consultant. $20,000 a month to start. We need someone with your experience and your character. The restaurant erupted in whispers. Richard looked like he might be sick. But Claire held up her hand. Mr. Thomas, I appreciate your offer. Y truly do. But I don't want charity. I don't want you to hire me because you feel guilty about what happened tonight. It's not charity, Thomas said earnestly. I've been looking for someone exactly like you for 6 months. Someone who knows European markets, who has real experience, who understands what it means to work hard. The fact that I found you here tonight is just luck. Good luck for me. Claire studied his face, searching for any hint of pity or condescension. She found none. But still she hesitated. I'll think about your offer, she finally said. But first I have a bet to complete. She turned back to Richard, who was crying openly now, his face buried in his hands. Daniel sat beside him, looking equally devastated. Other diners had begun recording on their phones. Claire picked up her notepad and pen. In flawless French, she began taking their dessert orders. Her accent was perfect, her vocabulary sophisticated. She moved with grace and professionalism, treating Richard with the same courtesy she had shown at the beginning of the evening. Richard could barely speak. Between sobs, he tried to apologize again, but Claire remained focused on her task. When she finished taking their orders and turned to leave, Richard grabbed her hand. What would happen next? Claire looked down at Richard's hand gripping hers. His fingers trembled and his eyes were red and swollen from crying. She gently pulled her hand away but didn't walk off. Something in his broken expression made her pause. Please, Richard choked out. Please let me say something. The restaurant remained silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped moving to watch through the service window. Claire nodded once, giving him permission to speak. Richard stood up slowly, his legs unsteady. He looked around at all the faces watching him, then back at Claire. I've spent my whole life judging people, he said, his voice cracking. I thought money and success made me better than everyone else. I thought people who served me were beneath me. I was cruel because I could be, because nobody ever stopped me. He gestured to his friends. Daniel laughed at my jokes. Thomas stayed quiet. Everyone always stayed quiet. So I got worse and worse, and I never thought about the people I was hurting. Daniel wiped his own eyes. I'm sorry too, Claire. I should have defended you. I should have told him to stop years ago. I was a coward. Thomas nodded in agreement, his face filled with regret. Richard continued, seeing you stand there, hearing about everything you sacrificed, everything you lost, it broke something inside me. Or maybe it fixed something that was broken all along. I don't know. But I can't be that person anymore. I can't live with myself knowing I made someone feel worthless when they were worth so much more than me. Claire listened quietly. Her anger had cooled, replaced by something softer but no less powerful. She thought about her mother, who had taught her that everyone deserves kindness. She thought about the person she used to be before grief and hardship had worn her down. My dignity doesn't depend on how I'm treated, Claire said softly. It comes from within. You couldn't take that from me, Richard. Nobody can. But you did take something from yourself. Every time you treated someone cruelly, you became less human. Richard nodded, tears streaming down his face. How do I fix it? How do I make this right? Claire considered his question. Around them, people leaned forward to hear her answer. This moment felt bigger than just her and Richard. It felt like something that could change things, ripple outward, touch other lives. You create workplaces where people are judged by their character, not their job title, Claire said. You make sure nobody in your company ever feels the way you made me feel. You use your power to protect people instead of hurting them. Richard grabbed a napkin and wiped his face. I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. Claire, come work for me. Not as a consultant. As our Director of Human Resources and Development. Help me rebuild our company culture. Help me become better. The offer hung in the air. Thomas looked surprised but nodded approvingly. Daniel's eyes widened with hope. Claire crossed her arms, thinking. If I accept, I have conditions. Anything, Richard said immediately. Full authority to make changes. Complete protection for any employee who reports mistreatment. Mandatory training for every manager in the company. She paused, looking directly into his eyes. And you attend every single session. Not as the boss. As a student. Richard didn't hesitate. I accept all your conditions, Richard said without hesitation. Every single one. I'll sit in those training sessions. I'll listen. I'll learn. Whatever it takes to make things right. Claire studied him for a long moment. She had seen men like Richard before, men who made promises when they were embarrassed but forgot them once the spotlight moved away. But something in his eyes seemed genuine. The shame wasn't just for show. It had cracked something deep inside him. Then we have an agreement, Claire said. But first, I finish what I started. She returned to the kitchen and placed their dessert orders. When she came back carrying a tray of chocolate cake and creme brulee, she moved with the grace of someone who had served dignitaries and business leaders across Europe. Every gesture was perfect. Every French word that left her lips was flawless. Richard sat frozen watching her work. Each elegant movement seemed to remind him of how badly he had misjudged her. How blind he had been. How cruel. When Claire set his dessert in front of him, she said in French, Your chocolate cake, sir. Prepared with the finest Belgian chocolate. I hope you enjoy it. Richard couldn't eat. He couldn't even look at the plate. He just sat there, destroyed by the weight of his own actions. Claire completed the service perfectly. When she finished, she stood at the head of their table and switched back to English. The bed is complete. I've served you entirely in French, exactly as you requested. The restaurant erupted in applause. People at other tables stood up, clapping and cheering. Some wiped tears from their eyes. A few were still recording, capturing every moment. Richard reached for the $1,000 on the table and held it out to Claire with shaking hands. Please, take it. You won. You earned it. Claire looked at the money, then at Richard's broken face. For a moment, everyone thought she would take it. She deserved it. She had won completely. But then Claire did something nobody expected. She pushed the money back toward Richard. Keep it, she said softly. Use it to do something good. Help someone who's struggling. Support a charity that helps families dealing with illness. Use it to become the person you should have been all along. The restaurant went silent again. Even the applause stopped. People stared in disbelief. Richard looked at the money, then at Claire. Fresh tears rolled down his cheeks. You're showing me mercy, he whispered. After everything I did to you, you're showing me mercy. I'm showing you what it means to be human, Claire replied. Revenge would feel good for a moment, but it wouldn't change anything. Real change comes from choosing compassion even when someone doesn't deserve it. Daniel covered his face with his hands, overwhelmed. Thomas smiled sadly, recognizing the extraordinary grace he was witnessing. Richard stood up slowly. When can you start? He asked. At the company, I mean. When can we begin fixing things? Claire pulled out her phone and checked the date. Give me 2 weeks to finish my commitments here. I won't leave this restaurant short-staffed. They've been good to me when I needed work. Of course, Richard said. Whatever you need. What happened next would change everything. 2 weeks passed like a dream Claire wasn't sure she wanted to wake from. The video of that night in the restaurant had spread across the internet. Millions of people watched as she stood up to Richard, as she revealed her past, as she showed mercy when she could have chosen revenge. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets wanted interviews. Other companies offered her jobs. People sent her messages saying she had inspired them to speak up about their own mistreatment at work. A woman in Seattle quit her job after her boss mocked her. A man in Chicago reported his manager for bullying. Claire's story had touched something deep in people who had spent years swallowing their pain. But Claire stayed focused. She finished her shifts at the restaurant, said goodbye to co-workers who had become friends, and prepared for her new role. On her last day, the owner gave her a hug and told her she would always have a home there. When Claire walked into Richard's company on her first day as Director of Human Resources and Development, everything felt different. Employees whispered and pointed. Some looked at her with hope. Others with curiosity. A few with skepticism, wondering if real change was possible. Richard met her in the lobby. He looked different too. Humbler. More careful with his words. He had spent the 2 weeks meeting with every employee in the company, listening to their concerns, apologizing for the culture he had created. "Ready?" he asked Claire. "Ready," she replied. The transformation began immediately. Claire implemented mandatory respect training for every manager. She created an anonymous reporting system so employees could speak up without fear. She established clear consequences for anyone who treated others poorly, regardless of their position in the company. And true to his word, Richard sat in every training session, not at the head of the table but among his employees, learning alongside them. The changes spread beyond Richard's company. Other businesses saw the video and started their own programs. Respect and renewal became a movement. Companies across the country began evaluating how they treated their workers, how they valued human dignity over titles and salaries. Claire became a voice for people who had been silenced. She spoke at conferences, wrote articles, and consulted with organizations that wanted to create better workplace cultures. But she never forgot where she came from. She never forgot the feeling of being invisible, of being treated like furniture instead of a person. 6 months after that night in the restaurant, Claire stood on a stage in front of thousands of people at a national conference. Richard sat in the front row, listening intently. Thomas was there too, along with Daniel, who had started his own initiative to support workers' rights. "Dignity isn't something anyone can give you or take away," Claire told the crowd. "It lives inside you, unshakable and eternal. But respect, that's something we owe each other. Every single day. In every interaction. With every person we meet." The audience rose to their feet, applauding. But Claire wasn't thinking about the applause. She was thinking about her mother, who had taught her to see the humanity in everyone. She was thinking about all the people still working jobs where they felt invisible, still serving customers who didn't see them as human. After the conference, Richard approached her. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me a chance to become better." Claire smiled. "Thank you for taking it." As she walked out of the conference hall, Claire received a text message from the restaurant. A new waitress was being mistreated by a customer, and she had stood up for herself, quoting Claire's words from that famous night. The customer had apologized and left a huge tip. Claire smiled. The ripples were spreading farther than she ever imagined. What had started as one woman's moment of courage had become a movement reminding the world that every person, regardless of their job, their struggles, or their circumstances, deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. We've come to the end of today's story. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe for more powerful and inspiring stories. See you in the next one.